3, 2, 1.
And what I wanted to say was that whatever happens, let it be okay. Whatever happens, let it be okay. Now, this doesn't mean you don't do something about it, especially if it's negatively affecting you. You want to do something about it so it doesn't happen again. What it means is you deal with it consciously. And I'll get into more what that means. So you deal with it consciously, not in a trigger mode. We all have some triggers here and there. Not in a fear mode, not in a reactionary mode, especially. But in a mode of calm, knowing the universe has your back. Knowing that you are entirely capable of getting through whatever it is that is happening. Whatever happens, let it be okay. Leo Babauta, who's the author of the book The Power of Less and the creator and lead blogger at Zen Habits, wrote this. He said, living consciously is about taking control of your life, about thinking about your decisions rather than making them without thought, about having a life that we want rather than settling for the one that befalls us. If you're drifting through life or feel out of control or don't know how you got there, deciding to live consciously could be the single most important thing you do. Now, conscious living can be difficult and exhausting, and yet when practiced, you will find it makes life easier, more graceful and flowing, more fulfilling, and that suffering becomes minimal, maybe even non-existent. And the conditions that get labeled problems, they melt away quicker and maybe instantaneously. You know, life is like a diamond, and each facet in our life absorbs and reflects light. The universal light, which of course created all, but also the light of opinion and judgment, if we allow it to seep in and limit us. With conscious living, the diamond facets become those of an expanded awareness through the light of divine intelligence and love, revealing the divinity that is in you, vibrating your life at the speed of the divine, which then makes life have more clarity, more brilliance, be full of symmetry and polish and creative fire. There's a gentleman named Bill Harris of the Centerpoint Research Institute, and he laid out his version of the tenets of conscious living in 2017 with what he called the 9 principles of conscious living. And we're going to spend, the next 9 weeks rediscovering these 9 principles. Now, I say rediscovering because these principles aren't just his. We've been talking about them. We've been working through them or some version of them every week for years now. And even before you started listening to me and hanging out with our community, you've probably read them in some other book or heard somebody else speak about them. I'm just using his book, his booklet, actually, as a guide. All right? So I want to bring kudos to him for this because I will be using it as a guide. Now, first of all, don't freak out if some sort of fear rids its ugly head as we're going through these conscious living principles. Because living a spiritually conscious life may feel odd or not normal for you. And that's okay because you have maybe not at all or only partially been living a conscious life. And so when you start living a conscious life, it may feel odd, and that's okay. We may think we're departing from some sort of sense of reality or the practicalities of living in the 3D world by some of these principles, because some of these principles talk about, especially today, turning away from the condition. But that's not true. That's not what we're teaching. We are not teaching you to ignore what is happening, just to not to be triggered by what's happening. Living consciously, you will actually be able to recognize and deal with any negative conditions that are showing up and get yourself into that have consciousness. Easier, quicker, stronger, deeper. And yeah, like I said, there might be some resistance, so you got to cut yourself some slack as you get yourself into this living consciously mosaic, life, consciousness, perspective. Even if this is a review for you, or whether you haven't found yourself using it all, or maybe you've found yourself knowing these 9 principles and slipping up or forgetting what they are, you don't need to have a pity party. Although, who hasn't had a pity party now and again? But remember, it's not about the visit to the pity party itself. It's about the length of the visit to the pity party. So if something comes up and it feels uncomfortable and you feel like, oh, I should have known this, or I should have been practicing this because I know this, that's it. You're done. That's your pity party. Those couple of sentences, boom, you're done. So no matter what you're learning, you're probably going to go through 4 stages. There's these 4 stages of learning, which were founded by a gentleman named Martin M. Broadwell in 1969. And in the 70s, this whole idea was developed by Noel Birch from the Gordon Training International. And they're known as the 4 phases for learning new skills. And I'm only bringing this out because as we learn or relearn these principles, they are going to become new skills. And you want to realize that there are 4 stages in learning a new skill or relearning a new skill that we've ignored for a while. And it might be easier if you think of this as when you started to drive, when you started learning how to drive. That's a great example of these stages of learning. And here they are. Stage 1, unconscious incompetence. So you don't follow the principle and you don't even know you're not following it. That's step 1. Step 2 is conscious incompetence. So you're not following the principle, but you're conscious of that fact. Stage 3 is conscious competence. So you can follow it, but only while you're paying attention to it and intentionally and consciously making yourself follow it. So you know the principle, you know to do it, you know how to do it, but it's not second nature yet. How's that? Stage 4 is unconscious competence. That's second nature. Second nature showing up. You have consciously followed the principle so consistently that now you can follow it without thinking about it. Now, the 9 principles we will learn are going to offer you independence from the sometimes radical fluctuation in life's conditions, okay? I don't have to tell you that there's sometimes very radical fluctuations in life's conditions. But as Dr. David Alexander wrote, claiming independence does not make you free, it makes you responsible. But wait a minute. Responsibility then comes with the power of choice. And the power of choice is what sets you free. It's a freedom you've always had. It's a freedom you always will have. And maybe you didn't use it very well. It's a freedom to choose how you feel, behave, and think. It's a freedom to perceive life and who the people and situations are that you are going to attract or become attracted to. It's a freedom to designate these situations as useful or non-useful. Now, as I always do, I urge you to watch your feelings, thoughts, and behaviors with curiosity and awareness versus opinion and judgment. And that's a lot. That's a lot of what this first principle is about. Watching your feelings, watching your thoughts, watching your behaviors with curiosity and awareness and without opinion and judgment. That keeps those triggers away as well. So, remembering those 4 stages of learning that you may have to go through all 4 as we go through these 9 principles, let us start with principle number 1. The principle of letting whatever happens be okay. This principle illustrates that the amount a person suffers is directly related to how much they resist the fact that things are the way they are. Now, Buddhists will recognize this principle in Buddhism and Hindu religious texts. The opposite concept is expressed in the word upadana, which means attachment or clinging. That is the opposite of what we want to do. In other words, the inability to practice or embrace detachment, which is viewed as an obstacle towards a serene and fulfilled life. If we are attached to this negative opinion somebody has of us, or this negative occurrence, or what we perceive as a negative occurrence, if we stay attached to that, then we stay in the suffering of that. As Carl Jung taught, I've said this many, many times, what we resist persists. Or to paraphrase Francis Scoville Shin, what we focus on boomerangs back into our experiences, back into our lives. So if we're going to focus on being a victim, then that's what we will continue to be. Well, I say, to hell with what brought the condition or experience into life. What are we going to do now? What are we going to think now? What perspective on how the universe works is going to prevail now? Are we going to be a victim or a victor? To the degree a person is willing and able to let whatever happens be okay, is the degree they will suffer in this negative experience. Attachments to the event, horrendous as some may be, is what keeps us in that state of suffering, whatever that suffering may be. We let our happiness and peace be controlled by outer circumstances versus inner circumstances, inner beliefs. Now, I understand we all have a map of reality, and that was created and developed through childhood and all these years and all the people that we've been in contact with. And some of these rules make us feel safe, right? They became a how things are supposed to be or how people are supposed to behave idea. So if we witness the rules constantly shifting or start feeling they're illogical or unfair or cruel or impossible to follow, fear and anxiety can set in. I totally get that. But we have to remember that the world may not follow our rules. In fact, they often violate them. Yes? How many instances can you think of where you feel your rules are being violated? So the wise thing is not to resist the rule non-followers, but accept them as they are, accept them as being their thing, whatever that is, and get them out of your life. Your discomfort, my discomfort, comes from the resistance itself more than the activity we're resisting. And an acceptance empowers you and empowers me to heal, release, transform, transcend that negative experience or the trigger that occurred because of that negative experience, and makes us more effective in creating wise responses and best choices. Ironic, huh? But it's the act of resistance and the focus on the problem or the condition that becomes all encompassing that is really the problem here. When what is not what you want as quick as possible, the idea is to remove the anger, remove the sadness, remove the fear, remove the anxiousness. That doesn't mean you don't feel them and give you a moment to feel them. It's what you do with that feeling afterwards. To know that your inner peace is not controlled by the outside condition or forces, and is not even controlled by what you're feeling in response. More of a reaction, I would think, to that outside condition. Now, you may prefer things to be this or that or such and such, but you're not being attached to them being that. And that makes me more nimble to get around to that stuff, no matter what shows up. Now, you've done this before. All of us have done this before. A relationship has ended. We've gotten over it. Maybe took time. A job you left or even might have been fired from. You ultimately come to terms with the situation or the condition, even if you went through all kinds of suffering before or during that actual occurrence. But at a certain point, you accepted what happened and moved on, and the suffering then stopped. Yes? The acceptance is a response that frees you to respond versus react. Now, some of us keep a hold of those old stories, and as you keep a hold of them, so shall you suffer through them again and again. You know, I had a job once, and a supervisor had me do something different than my current assignment. You know, he took me off my current assignment and put me on something else because it wasn't busy enough at that particular moment to have me there. So I went and I changed assignments, and I noticed that someone else had moved in on my previous assignment and was allowed to stay, and I was not happy about that. I felt put upon. I felt a little angry at it, and I was thinking to myself, I'm following the rules, and yet I'm seemingly being punished by being moved and having somebody else whose job that wasn't to do that job. But then I started becoming aware of my reaction. I started becoming conscious of my reaction. I was able to then witness it in a non-attachment way and end my resistance to that situation. And as I ended my resistance to that situation, I ended my suffering. My anger went away. My discontent went away. It may have looked as if that person, that thing or that event or whatever was creating my discomfort, but it was really my reaction to it that did that. I accepted what I thought and felt, and even though I felt uncomfortable about what was happening, that it was not what I would have preferred, by ending my resistance to it, I removed my suffering from it. And that anger went away, and that discontent went away, and I was fine. Now, this doesn't mean you shouldn't be goal-oriented. It doesn't mean you should not work towards making things the way you have decided they will be. It's not about ignoring abuse. It's about being the emotionally healthy person who can maintain their equanimity and inner peace even while working on goals or removing negative behaviors that are around them. This approach is not about fatalism. It's not about disinterest in the outcome. Detachment, as it is called, it is not allowing abuse or ignoring your feelings, but rather a decision not to let the event throw you off center and not to be attached to the toxic attitudes and beliefs of others. Your neutrality or non-attachment to the emotions of the negative situation or condition is a powerful asset to manifest the positive outcome you've decided to have and detract that which opposes it. Do you ever find as you change your perspective on life, sometimes certain friends just stop calling? And that may hurt at first, but then you realize, well, wait a minute, I'm not sure that I want that kind of friend in my life anymore. I don't think that way. I don't think those things that we thought were funny are funny anymore. I don't enjoy that lifestyle anymore, et cetera, et cetera. And those people just kind of wither away, go away. So the idea with this principle is don't resist, insist within. Insist on clarity, insist on respect, insist on kindness, insist on affluence, insist on health and happiness and love in your life, surrounding your life. Insist on that and watch as you are not attached to people who might be opposing that in one way or another. More than likely, not against you, but just being themselves. Watch that go away. Watch that wither away. And you can use meditation, my book, the affirmative incantations we do every week, other spiritual practices to fill your emotional bank account with the love, power, and grace that allows you to have this healthy detachment. Watch yourself talk with great curiosity, not opinion or judgment. Great curiosity, especially in moments of resistance. You know, just like getting to Carnegie Hall, if you're a performer, you got to practice. Don't think this is going to happen automatically, instantaneously. It could, and that's great if it does, but you have to practice this. You have to bear witness to the resistance that's going on in your life, like a scientist watching an experiment. There's no agenda here, just curiosity. What is it I'm doing? What is it I'm feeling? Wow, you might find some humor in it if you allow yourself. Don't be embarrassed. Don't be into shame, blame, or guilt. Just look at it and see what's going on. Wow. Why am I feeling this way? This is weird. I don't want to feel this way, even if something like that happens again. And as you do that, you will gather strength and power and grace for if there is a next time that someone does their thing that doesn't match your thing. Now, you might want to write this principle on a piece of paper and carry it with you as a reminder to be detached from the conditions, to not give attention to that so that your suffering is minimal or nil. As Bill Harris, whose book we're using in the next 9 weeks, he wrote, "If resistance is the poison, witnessing is the antidote." If resistance is the poison, witnessing is the antidote. You might, if resistance starts popping in someday, step away and do a 15-second reboot meditation. Take deep breaths. Give yourself an affirmation. Takes 15 seconds. Or count to 5. Do the count to 5 thing and allow that to reset what's going on. Take yourself a few moments, close your eyes, and think of 5 things. 5 blessed things you appreciate in life. Just 5, real quickly. This is not stuff that takes long. Or do a power pose. If you're at work, you might want to step away, go into the restroom or something, and do a power pose. for 2 minutes. That resets your body. That resets your brain. That resets your emotional bank account. Being in this, using this principle is the beginning of what mystics call expanded awareness. When you are fully present to and accepting of your thoughts and feelings, and you open the pathway for the unconscious to reorganize itself to progressively higher levels of functioning. You become more open, you become more carefree, you become more serene and flowing. And this doesn't mean you can't be serious about stuff. You're not being flippant about things. You're just knowing what you are going to allow to happen within you. If it feels uncomfortable or there's some discomfort, there's probably resistance there. And when you sense resistance, you meet it with acceptance. Now, ironically, you'll be much more effective in creating any external change you may prefer by being accepted versus resistant. It's really interesting because you're doing that within. You're not going to the person who you feel wronged you or the situation that you feel is going against you by being aggressive of, I'm not going to take this stuff. You accept them as they are and move forward through what you want to happen within you. So practice being attentive to your reactions and responses, and you'll see we all create our own suffering. Watch yourself. Eventually, it'll become more and more difficult for you to keep creating this suffering because as you become a conscious liver, a liver of consciousness, a person who lives consciously. Tried to be clever there, didn't work. You'll realize you'll have the power to let it be okay. Because you are the power that creates your environment. You are the power that creates your own health and happiness. You are the power that creates your own affluence, influence, balance, and success. You are the power that manifests a life that is succulent, fulfilling, and joyous. You are the power. So whatever happens, let it be okay. Thank you so much. Namaste.